All right. All right, let's get ready to take this into a completely different place. Chris Vasquez is a director of product engineering at Hyperloop Technologies. He is an aerospace engineer with 15 years of professional experience and holds degrees from Texas A&M University and the University of Colorado Boulder. Vasquez began his career as a mechanical engineer at the Boeing Company, supporting mission control at NASA JSC. Prior to Hyperloop, he headed materials and processes engineering for space exploration technologies. During his tenure at SpaceX, Vasquez developed new molecular contamination analysis, served as a responsible engineer for the Dragon birthing mechanism, and architected a custom online materials database that will soon be deployed at Tesla Motors. He is defining the Hyperloop product family and is excited to work for a company that is redefining boundaries and improving quality of life. When we were thinking about this conference and disruptive design, this project was really at the top of our list. I want to welcome Chris to the stage, but first, let's take a quick look at Hyperloop.
There are many engineering milestones to bring Hyperloop to reality, and this is one of the bigger, more tangible ones. We've developed a custom propulsion system, and we built a very specific test to showcase the trajectory we're on, which is to build a lot of hardware and absolutely prove to everyone that Hyperloop is coming and coming very soon.
We are standing on hallowed ground. This is a significant moment for us.
When you think of Hyperloop, you think maybe this is going to happen years from now. It's going to happen much quicker than anyone imagines. When it does, the world will never be the same.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's welcome Chris Vasquez. There he is. Hey, Chris. Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, you got
a seat. So it's not fake, it's real.
It is real, yeah.
That was like our first conversation. Hey, this thing's real. I love it.
Yeah, it's one of the things we've been trying to get out is that, this thing is actually, the tech is there now.
Right.
We can build it now. It's just not cost effective. And I think one of the tenets that we strive for is to make this a very accessible transportation system. And so if we're going to do that, we got to bring down the cost. And so that's really where most of the innovation these days is coming.
Right. How did this all start for you? Where were you when you got the call to come work on this, the first time you heard about it? And were you like the rest of us when we saw this in the feed on Twitter? What the hell is this?
Yeah, so I just decided I needed a break from space. I had been doing space right out of school. Wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid, so it was all like space camp and Boeing with space station and then SpaceX, and I just was spaced out. And I said, I gotta take a break. And I had a couple months around Christmas time to just kind of recenter and spend time with the family, which was good. My wife is actually a technical recruiter for Hyperloop One, and so she was on me almost immediately. Right. You got to come work here. And I was like, I don't know. She goes, Brogan wants to talk to you. I said, all right. And I knew Brogan from SpaceX days. So sure enough, he hits me up and we chat. And, I'd honestly walked in there expecting there to be like a vision, a plan, maybe some hardware laying around. But I was fully expecting him to say, as soon as we get this one thing, like as soon as we get the flux capacitor to work, we'll have it. And I was like this, we just need that one thing that makes it all possible. And I walked in there and it all worked. I mean, they had proof of concept, they had, the technology was there, super smart people, the people that make you really self-conscious as a technical professional, like what have I been doing with the last 15 years because I am not at this level. So I knew then that, he kind of had me right there.
You told me on the phone, I remember we were talking, and you were telling me how quickly and easily you get bored.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like all the things that you just said that you did, SpaceX and Boeing, and that you would get bored doing these things, yet that happens to you just like the rest of us. You're like a normal human being.
Yeah, it's, yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit. I'm sure this is the wrong word. Masochistic is the word. There's a problem that's out there, and it can be solved. I mean, people do it. It just takes too long. So I get a role, and my outlook from day one is that my job is to make the job that I have obsolete. And so I start to look at that job, and I say, okay, what sucks about it? And then, disclaimer, I sometimes let language slip, so I apologize.
Don't worry about it.
All right, you got a bleeper in the back.
Yeah,
All right,
sure.
cool. So, yeah, so, I do this work, and it's exciting. I get it to work. I get it, orders of magnitude less time for me, automate it. And then as soon as it's done and it becomes the job to just execute it again, I'm just checked out. Like it's not the job. I'm the guy that like gets it to a good spot and then says, here, you go make it more efficient on an incremental level, on an iterative level. So unfortunately, what that means is that by the time that I've done something to where I can be comfortable with it and maybe talk at a very deep level with it, I'm bored with it. And so I go chase a new job where I'm ignorant and I'm dealing with people who have been doing this for many years. And so it takes a lot of my time to just catch up. So we have the day-to-day, we'd be talking, and then after hours I would go learn about the stuff that I should know already. And so it creates this like constant tension that I crave, apparently. So that's unfortunate for
your
my heart.
employers?
Yeah, maybe not.
So tell us more about Hyperloop. Tell us about the timing in your head, or what it's going to be like to experience sitting in this thing. And where's the first test? Is it going to be San Francisco, LA? What are we talking about here?
I get that question a lot.
Yeah. And tell us things that no one else has heard so that we can break them here.
Scoop.
Where's your PR
That's
people?
What you want. They're unfortunately not here.
Okay,
so.
great. Don't worry about it. I got this all covered. You can say whatever you want.
All right. Famous last words.
Yeah,
right?
I go get a bleeper for your cursing and a bleeper for your press mistake.
All right. So timing. At a step back, I think that's one of the things that kind of drew me to this. I was speaking with Brogan, and working at SpaceX, Martian colonization is kind of the end goal. Admittedly, that seems to be a longer-term goal. But when I talked to Brogan, he was telling me about the time frame about this, and it all seemed very, very close. I think that by the end of 2020, we're looking to have a production system working somewhere in the world. So that would be most likely cargo, freight. People seem much more reticent to let us try out a system on like socks and iPads than people. So we'll probably go that route first. But then, not too long after, I'd say 1 to 2 years after that, we're looking to have a production passenger transport ready. So that's kind of the time scale we're looking at.
Excellent. How does your mind work in terms of all the things you've heard today? I saw you sitting here all day. You've got a lot of creative people in here. You've got a lot of people that are thinking about problems. You're thinking about ways to solve them creatively in the way that their minds are working. And everything you heard today, how does your mind look at a problem, look at this, and try to solve it? Is it mathematics first? How do you look at it?
Visual, for sure. There's a lot of, wow, that's a complex question. That's one I'm still trying to answer, honestly, myself.
Right.
I think that if I was just going to try to abstract my creative process, it's trademarked, by the way, it's really just to like take in a lot of information, sometimes too much. I tend to get lost a little bit in the details, but just gather a bunch of information and reorganize it in a lot of different ways. And that's spreadsheets, that's flowcharts, that's graphics. I got a soft spot in my heart for infographics. I love those things. I wish I could design those better. But essentially, it's looking at data a different way, and I hope at some point to extract meaningful relationships. I think, there's a risk at making incorrect inferences on how some of the data interacts. So you got to, have a judicious eye on that stuff. But then, it's really graphical for me, and if I can make sense of it graphically, then it tends to kind of a natural order of things seems to pan out. And it's kind of, it sounds boring when you say it, but then you just develop a process from that. Like my mind has made sense of this in this way. So I have this logic tree in my head that makes sense. And so how do I now create a process out of that? And then how do I automate that process? And to me, if I can automate it, then I understand it. And so that's kind of like the rinse and repeat part of it. And you just continue to iterate until, you've convinced everybody that you know what you're talking about. And then
Sounds a lot like what I do. Did you find yourself the odd man out growing up? Were you thinking in a way that other people weren't? How did you find your way to do what you're doing today? Because it's very particular. There's not a lot of jobs for the kinds of things that you've been doing.
yeah, interesting. The odd man out. Well, I grew up, I guess, an only kid for about 4 years, and then, had a couple of brothers after that. Was a latchkey kid for a minute. So you learn to get comfortable with being alone. Was a traditional introvert. Didn't like to talk to people. Would needed that alone time to center. Spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house over the summers. I think we grew up very poor. And so the local library was definitely something that I craved going to. And it was the space books that I was drawn to, probably because it was mostly pictures. It was a lot of quasars and black holes and things like that. So to me, that was really like just the start of it all. How I got to this place, I just kind of followed the passion, led me to Boeing. Love that place for a lot of reasons, but found myself watching the clock at a very young age. I felt that I was too young to be watching the clock and waiting for the day to end. I was very fortunate to get kind of a foot in the door at SpaceX, and that place changed me. It was trial by fire, taught me it really honed my skills as an engineer. Got me a lot of experience in a lot of different roles, and so it fed that appetite for, just needing new topics to deal with on the daily and new problems to solve. And we were an early company, so I didn't walk into the door with all these, solutions already in place. We didn't have a lot of back-end stuff. So you really learn to own something from cradle to grave and think long-term, and then also be comfortable with making decisions and having that kind of accountability. And then I think at that point, I don't know if I can work at a not startup company anymore, which is kind of frightening when I think about my long-term health. But yeah, that's where I am.
Hey, well, there's plenty of these places still around.
Fair enough.
So you don't really have, you haven't, in many ways, you don't have anything to compare it to, right? You haven't, it wasn't like you went from Kraft to Boeing. It wasn't like you had, I did this, that's why I went. You weren't an engineer at a traditional place. Mm-hmm. You've kind of been, although Boeing's pretty traditional, you must say, when you think of that versus SpaceX. Yep. But how are the people thinking differently from Boeing and at Hyperloop? Is there a really massive difference in the way people are thinking in these two places? Not to put down any of them or elevate any of them, but what is really going on in two different places like this?
I think it's just, you're coming into the business cycle at different points. To some degree, SpaceX is kind of maturing to that point. You chase certain customers and certain business, and SpaceX is really good. And a lot of the effort we did was to kind of introduce new paradigms into how they think about safety and reliability and redundancy and cost efficiency. But those companies grow, and you have to scale to match the demand. And so I think that Boeing at one time was that rogue company, that new company, and they have just grown to be where they are. And I think that SpaceX is on that trajectory, and the people that get you there early are not always the people that are going to be there late stage. That just requires a different skill set. And so I think that, Hyperloop, again, is just really, it's back again. We're early. It's a new group of people. It's a new task. In a lot of ways, it's more challenging. It's a new transportation system from the ground up. It's a bigger sandbox to play in, but you're allowed to reinvent and reimagine the things, how you'd actually want to do things if you could do it starting today. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that there's really any core differences in thought process. I mean, maybe there are some person to person or from like, leadership regime to the next, but in general, I think that it's just mainly a function of where the company is and what problem they're trying to solve.
How many people are at Hyper? Give us give us a lay of the land. How many people are there? Where are you located? What are you doing?
So we are based, our innovation headquarters is in Los Angeles. We're about 150, 160 strong. I'd say about 70% engineering. So definitely still a very engineering focused. But yeah, it's a great team. I think that when you look at us as compared to other Hyperloop endeavors, we're a dedicated staff, a very close-knit family. I've heard a lot about trust and, this is a complicated, all these things that I'm hearing about today are super complicated, very exciting. But at the end of the day, like you said, you get a sense for when you talk to somebody, like if you're getting the truth, ulterior motives. And so it's very important to us to have a close-knit community and be close, because being safe is not only about feeling like I can give an answer and feel like it's a meaningful contribution to something, but it's also feeling like I can tell you if I think your idea sucks. Now here's why, but I also need to be safe to feel like I can tell you what I'm really thinking. And you can't really do that over email, can't do that over the phone because tone doesn't translate. So, I think that us creating that single space where we're co-located with operations and human resources and legal, the engineers, the technicians, we're all there working together on the daily. And it's a very exciting and a very safe place to be.
Excellent. You get a lot of interaction with Elon Musk. How is that? What's going on there? What's up with that dude?
Yeah, wow. That's a loaded question. I mean, his
So as far as
brilliance,
inspiration and how you look up to him.
brilliance is undeniable. I worked at SpaceX, and in the early days there, I walked in the door, and he was the last interview you had before you got an offer or not. And it's intimidating to say the least. And this was before he blew up. And he was still a very imposing figure. So, you kind of get his ideas a little bit as much as you can. I think he operates on another plane of existence. In a lot of respects, he's able to think long term. I still worry about what I'm going to eat for breakfast, and I don't know that he has those mundane thoughts like I do. But he's not really involved with our company per se, other than open sourcing the idea and having some ties to our one of our co-founders, Shervin, who kind of outed him and outed this concept in a public forum and forced him to write the white paper in 2013, and then said, I want to work on this idea, and Elon gave him the blessing and said, go forth and do this, and kind of said that to the world in general. There's a lot of ties with former SpaceX employees that are working there, me being one of them, Brogan being another. But on the day-to-day, he's not involved. So he's really not a driving force in our company, other than just an inspiration to many in the company at some point along the way.
Do you aspire to be able to think like that, the way that he does? Or is that just, you'd rather just kind of stay on Earth a little bit?
I spend a lot of time trying to figure out if I want to embrace being me as I am, or should I strive to be something else? And I don't know that I have the answer to that. I take solace in the fact that everything you excel at, or when people have this like innate talent that they have that I'm jealous of at some point, and I get jealous a lot about that kind of stuff. I take solace in the fact that you suffer in some other way. And I don't know where he suffers because I don't know him well enough like that. But if I were to try to attain that level of knowledge, deep knowledge and vision, that it would cost me somewhere else. And I'm pretty happy with where I am. I got a great family. I love my job. I get to come and talk to cool people like you and places like this. So, other than to strive to develop in ways that interest me, I don't think that I have a real big drive to just try to be someone else.
Excellent. Hey, let's open it up for some questions. Everybody get ready to ask some. I'll ask you, just being here today, knowing that you've got a crew of people that are constantly tasked in a very fast way to come up with ideas, to come up with product strategy, to come up with ways to make lives easier for human beings to be able to do things and to promote those things and tell stories. What is your advice to someone to be able to enter their day and look at the world in a new way, to erase the things in their mind, to start fresh and to have that magic moment?
Wow. The first piece of advice is I'm not the person you should be taking advice from. The second piece, I guess, if you're gonna, put a gun to my head and make me give some wisdom, I don't be afraid to ask questions that you don't know the answer to. I walked into a room, and luckily I'm back in this spot where I'm probably the dumbest person in the room, and it took me a long time to get comfortable to ask questions that I didn't know the answer to, and I thought that I just wasn't educated enough, and it turned out that a lot of people didn't know the answer to those questions. And they're very basic questions like, why is this important to us? Are there things that we won't do? It's very easy in a customer-driven company to say, the customer's always right and to always chase the dollar. But I think at some point you got to understand or make a decision early on about, and maybe this is true for corporate and personal, just decide who I am and what I'm about and decide for yourself that maybe there are lines I won't cross.
Is it important to start with the why?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that. I read a book. I say read. I can't remember the last time I read a book. Audiobooks is the way to go, by the way. Start with a why by a TED speaker, and I think his name is Simon Sinek. And he kind of created this paradigm, or maybe just unveiled it, that basically said, there are like 3 concentric circles of reason, and it in the center it's why, and then it expands to how, and then it expands to what. And externally looking in, you see the what, and at the very core of it is why. And when you start with a why, and he gave me a lot of comfort early on, because he was like, the why resides deep in you, and it's this very instinctual, embedded thing. And there's a reason that it's called a gut feeling and that you can't articulate it. It's because it's so far deep. It's in that part of your brain that doesn't know words. It doesn't know language. It just knows feeling. And it's made me very comfortable to come out and just say things even though I don't have the right words. As an engineer, I want to have all my T's crossed and my I's dotted before I present you with an idea, because I want it to be able to withstand the critique and the criticism that I expect and that I would give to another idea. But a lot of times that results in me holding on to an idea longer than I should. And I think over time you realize that you start to get afraid of that idea and people not liking it. And so you hold on to that and become protective. And so when I throw it out there, after I've grown accustomed to nurturing this idea, I'm very resistant to have that idea modified or critiqued at all. So I become very comfortable. I have become comfortable. I'm still getting there. To throwing out ideas, even ill-formed, just to get sunlight on them and say, hey guys, tell me if this is the wrong way of thought. Does this inspire you to think any way differently? Is this a clue on where we should be going? A, I get less attached, so I'm less defensive. But B, it's okay to be, even in a very technical profession, to say like, that just doesn't feel right, that doesn't look right, doesn't sound right. And so I've learned to kind of embrace this creative part of just being human in a very technical profession.
Excellent. How about some questions from the audience?
Yeah, I was curious, why implement this system? Like I'm right here. How would it be better than our current modes of transportation, or in what ways would it improve on them? And then kind of just what would it look like in terms of, you walk out your door, how far do you have to walk to a Hyperloop stop? Would it be like within a city or connecting cities one to another?
Sure. A lot of questions there, and I have a similar problem to Doug, in that I kind of lose track of the third or fourth question by the time I finish answering the first one. Okay, why do we need something new? Well, first off, I think it's a lot of people look at us and they see us as a threat, and I think it's important to understand that we are not trying to cannibalize another form of transportation. If you look at the existing ecosystem, They all perform a very needed function. I think the problem is we're just reaching capacity. These things all did what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to enable growth and societies to grow and expand, and so we have done that. If we expand them not only with aged technology, we're talking hundreds, if not more, years old. They're very consuming technologies, roads and rails, they just consume the land, and if you expand that, they consume more land. Same with ports, but they're necessary. So we see ourselves as very complementary to this existing ecosystem. I think that we're just looking to target a certain portion of what they're being used for. So if you look at something like a car, for instance, and you say, hey, I love the freedom that my car affords me. I get to it. I get in it when I want to. I think Brogan has said at one point, I'm never late when I get to my car. You are late when you get to work and you use that car for mass transit scenarios, right? We all know that there's a sweet spot of traffic. Like if I don't leave now, I'm going to hit rush hour. So all these different modes are being used to try to tackle this gap. And so your freedoms that people typically associate with things like cars goes away when you're using them in certain applications. And I think that those are the applications we're targeting. How it would look, we're targeting, city center to city center. I think the plane is, and the airport infrastructure in general is amazing. It's unfortunate that I have to go so far out of the city to get to there. My specific, if I wanted to go to LAX, it takes me an hour just to get there. I'm supposed to get there 2 to 3 hours in advance. And if I'm coming somewhere like to San Francisco, it's an hour flight. So you realize immediately that I'm spending 3 to 4 times more time getting to that mode of transportation than it takes for me to actually use it. So we're really targeting developing a transportation experience where it is city center to city center. Also direct to destination. I don't know that part of it is probably lost. I think a lot of people see Hyperloop and they see the tech, they see the linear electric motor, they see the levitation, they see the tube. But if you're really looking at trying to change transportation, you can't just be a replacement for a certain portion of that transportation experience. I can't just have an airport at the ends of a Hyperloop because the airport is kind of the problem, right? There's that long bottleneck that has to happen. So what we're trying to do is implement at the very early stages this direct destination. So if you think about how a highway should work, I could stay on the main highway all the way from here to LA, and then I have these off ramps that kind of let me shoot off on there. It's not like it stops at every location. It's not a stop and start. The reason we're able to do that is because we do what we're calling packetized transportation. Because we can move so fast, we don't have to try to carry a lot of people at once. It's not more people less often. It's less people more often. And that's what the speed affords us. So we can say things like, let's take the first handful of people that are going to San Francisco, you get on and you send them. So now I'm not waiting 20 minutes for the plane to board or 20 minutes for a train to board. It's just a handful of minutes for everybody to get on, and then we're going right to where we want to go. So Hyperloop is not just tech. It's actually expanding the entire transportation experience to make it very seamless. We're not last mile, so we expect to seamlessly integrate, and we're working with other companies on that, on how do we make it very seamless to go from my door to a terminal to the destination, and then from there to where we want to go.
In terms of G-forces, and I'm not a physicist, although I heard a lot of stuff today and I'm getting a lot smarter.
Okay.
How is the average person going to handle the G-forces? And is that a pressurization thing and tapered way to get to high velocity of speed? What goes on? And will there be an age limit? Will there be people of a certain age won't be able to go on there because of health issues? Is that all going to be talked about? Are you thinking about all that stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So first things first, there's a difference between speed, velocity, and acceleration.
Of course. I was going to get into that, but I
all
wanted
right.
you to...
Well, people,
I didn't want to show you up too much.
some of the questions we get are like, oh my God, you're traveling at 600 and something miles an hour. What is eyes in the back of the head? And I'm like, well, no, that's not how it works. You feel acceleration, so that's a fair point. If I accelerate from 0 to 600 seconds, 600 miles per hour in a very short amount of time, then yes, that acceleration going from 0 to very fast in a very small amount of time will give you that kind of eyes in the back of your head. And it's absolutely not what we're going for. Once you're at speed, and you all sense this in planes, once you're at speed and you're not changing speed, the physics work just like they would if I was sitting still. Einstein had a lot to say about that. So it's all in about how I get you from stop to there. We are able to control the acceleration and be very slow with that. In fact, we can tailor that. So we can be a little bit more aggressive with cargo, but we can definitely be very, very gentle with people, and we plan to be. So we will kind of be a lot more comfortable in the acceleration than you would in a typical plane. So definitely very pet friendly. You can bring your dog, and I think if you've seen your dog in a car, you will agree that that is not a very pet friendly environment. Grandma friendly. I think that, other than saying you take the standard precautions that you would take on any mode of transportation, we can tailor the acceleration. We have done a very extensive search on the acceleration limits in all axes on various modes of transportations. And so luckily we are able to actually tailor that significantly.
Excellent. Questions? Anybody? Where are we?
I've answered every question. Awesome.
Actually got one here.
Where are
Okay.
we?
Just curious, you talked a lot about the nature of your collaborations and not wanting to be the smartest person in the room and all that kind of stuff. How would you describe your most meaningful collaborators? Is it by discipline type? Is it by personality type? Like what makes someone the sort of best wall for you to bounce around with?
Somebody that has a completely different background than me. I know how I think, and I know how other aerospace engineers think. In fact, I probably know a lot about how other engineers think. One of the things I really loved about this specific position, this role that I've been given, is that I now interface with business development, business intelligence, user experience, safety. We just hired a guy named Doug who's working with systems, this Internet of Everything. And those guys bring such a different light, Kim and marketing, they all bring a different light to, it's the same mission, the same core objective for the company, and yet they all have their own view on how that story should be told, which is great because, this product is for them. It's for me, it's for you, it's for everyone. So at the tech description, it's pretty straightforward. When you say, what is Hyperloop? I can tell you that it's a controlled environment. I can tell you that it's a linear electric motor. I could tell you all the specs. But at the end of the day, it's like asking somebody, what is a computer? And I think the computer is more about what you use it for. And so to just deal with people that are only concerned about the technical specs, then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get fit and function. And I think that what we're really after is to do a lot of the form, transform. And so when you get those other disciplines and other backgrounds and other filters to look at the same problem, to look at the same objective and say, this is how we need to convey our message. This is how we need to design this experience. I learn the most from those people for sure.
Excellent. Anybody else? It's hard to see where the mic is. Coming over.
Hi. Over on the side.
Okay. Got it. Yes.
So I was thinking about when you were speaking about the audio book that you would listen to. And I was thinking in particular with men, how you get conditioned to really rely heavily on thinking and analyzing, how it was you started to develop your intuition and your kind of your gut feeling for things.
Good question.
I got married to a woman who was definitely not a critical thinker. She's very emotional. She is, I'll give her a shout out. Her name's Kelly. Bonus points there, I think.
All right, good.
You know, all jokes aside, she is a very emotional person. She's very intuitive when it comes to reading body language and tone. And I think I'm slicker than I am when I talk to her. She picks up on everything. And she made me very comfortable about speaking. And again, this is me not wanting to talk. So, you know, arguments happen and I stay quiet because I don't have my bulletproof argument formulated. And she just says, get it out there. And we get it out there and it's awkward and it's painful, but it, you know, you get through it. And she got me comfortable talking about everything. And so I started to just trust that I didn't have to. And again, this goes back to that safe working space where I can say things that aren't perfect and trust that, you know, you're going to have a little bit of tolerance to know that it's not coming out perfect and I haven't thought through everything. And I have just learned to, you know, you look back over the history of you professionally and I've learned to just trust that, you know, in general, my instincts are correct. I may not have ever had this role before. I may have not ever developed a product like this before, but there is some wisdom in your intuition. And so if you surround yourself with the right people, you're not afraid to kind of go out in areas. And so me tackling different topics and doing these things has kind of made that the norm where you just go out and say, okay, well, I'm going to kind of fight through all this awkwardness that I feel, all this insecurity that I feel, and I'm just going to start talking and trust that we're going to get through this together. You kind of get comfortable with operating in that mode. So women is the short answer to your question.
I agree with that. And perfect, because we have our next speaker is going to talk all about that, the power of women, which is great. I think we're out of time. Any final advice? Anything you were thinking about on your way to speak here today that you wanted to say that you didn't say? Anything you can leave us with?
No, I mean, I think I didn't know what to expect. You know, I came in here.
Neither did I, by the way.
I came in here wanting to focus on like, okay, talk this, talk that, mention that. But I'm really trying to focus on staying like, you know, in the moment, listen. And I'm pretty awed about the people that are here, and they're from all walks, and they come from all different things, and we're all kind of circling the same objective in different ways, and it's just to connect each other and connect people, and be that emotionally with storytelling or with an app or physically in our sense. It's all about trying to solve and connect that problem. And so it's comforting to know that we all recognize that singular need. Even with the advent of social media, you know, we still feel like there's a value to being close and present with each other. And so it's comforting to know that even though we're tackling it from different issues and we're coming at it from different angles, that we all ultimately want the same thing.
I agree with that.
I will say that, and I have to say this, we are doing a lot more testing. You know, we did that thing that was POTE, that was our open air test, that was testing subsystems. We will have a system level test at the end of the year, and you will see a lot more stuff from us. Hyperloop will come sooner than you think, but exactly when we need it.
Awesome. And I expect you to be on that first voyage.
Yeah, I mean, if they'll let me.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for coming, Chris.
Got it.
This was fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was terrific.